Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming to the Renee Girls Foundation. Even though we're all very intimately gathered right here, I'm going to speak in the microphone for everyone back there. Welcome to the foundation. I'm Susan Fisher. I'm the director of the Renee Girls Foundation, and we're really happy to have this book party for Kate Culkin. I think a lot of you are here and know Kate and support her and her work. But those of you who don't know Kate, she's the assistant professor of history at Bronx Community College. And this is her first book. Her first book based on her dissertation. She did her PhD dissertation just in the neighborhood here at NYU. And if you haven't read the book, it's a really wonderful book on the 19th century American sculptor Harriet Hosmer. It's beautifully written. I've really been enjoying it. And I just have to say, the integration of art history, biography, and history is really seamless, and it's just a really beautifully written book. Not all art history books read that well, I have to say, so it's really, really a great book. I want to introduce, before Kate comes up and gives you a talk about her book and about her subject, I would like to first introduce to you Mimi Gross, who is Chaim Gross's daughter and also the president of our board of the foundation. We'd like to welcome you.
Literally one-liner, just welcome to this special event. We hope that you'll come back and make it a regular part of your schedules. And we're very, very pleased to have Katie here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to speak very briefly, and then people can go back to socializing and enjoying this beautiful space. I know some of you have known me and been been listening to me talk about Harriet Hosmer for years, but I just wanted to start by giving sort of a brief overview of her life, and then talk about some of the sort of specific issues I really hope to address in this biography. So Harriet Hosmer was born on October 9th, 1830, to Hiram and Sarah Hosmer in Watertown, Massachusetts. And this is her father. I'll point her here. Oops. That's her father. She had a very dramatic childhood. Within 6 years of her birth, her two younger brothers and her mother had all died. And her father, who was a doctor, responded by putting his two remaining children, who were both girls, on this intensive physical fitness regime that included hunting and tromping through the woods and rowing on the Charles. And he also took them out of school, proclaiming there is a whole lifetime for the education of the mind, but the body develops in a few years, and during that time, nothing should be allowed to interfere with its free and healthy growth. Hosmer's sister died in 1838, so just 2 years later. But Hosmer herself thrived under the regime, and this image of her as this healthy tomboy and having this very unusual childhood with this very supportive father became a very important part of her public image in her adult years. She eventually returned to formal education, studying at the Sedgwick School in Lenox, Massachusetts. And then she also studied anatomy at St. Louis Medical College. And she went to St. Louis for a variety of reasons, but one was that her best friend, Cornelia Crowe, later Cornelia Crowe Carr's father, was an important businessman and civic leader in St. Louis, and he could sort of open the door to the medical school for her. And right here, this is actually one of her anatomy studies, which is a little dark here, but it's this sort of very detailed study of the human's muscular system. Which I find very creepy and charming. In 1852, she moved to Rome, where she joined a sort of large community of expatriate artists who were living there at the time. And she settled in a home near the Spanish Steps, which she shared with Charlotte Cushman, who was a famed American actress, and as well as several other women, including eventually Emma Stebbins, who sculpted Bethesda Fountain in Central Park. Then in 1857, just 5 years later, the New York Times raved of her statue Beatrice Cenci. The conception of the statue is masterly. It is exceedingly bold and original without being overstrained, and striking without being affected. So that's when she's just 27 years old. Important highlights of her career include her Zenobia in chains, and I'm going to have a picture of that later. Her memorial to Thomas Hart Benton, which is located in a St. Louis park, and that's up here in the corner. Her talk, which she sold many copies of, and it really sort of earned her money throughout her career, and also her Sleeping Fawn, which is in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. In the 1870s, she began to spend more of her time in England, and then it was only in the late 1880s that she began to come back to the United States for considerable periods of time. She devoted much of her later years to creating a perpetual motion machine. Up here is one of the patents, and that was one of my happiest days as a researcher when I found out that the New York Public Science and Industry Library had books of British patents that included the illustrations. I thought I was going to have to pay someone in England to figure out how to find this for me. And then she also had a late career renaissance with her model of Queen Isabella, which was shown at the California Midwinter Fair in 1894. And when she died in 1908, the Boston Globe titled her obituary, "Most Famous of American Women Sculptors." But at the same time, another obituary noted that many people sort of expressed shock that she was still alive. And I think that's where she was from 1908 at least until like the 1970s, someone who had been incredibly famous but was also had become pretty obscure. So one question I often get is, you know, so one question I often get is sort of, why were you interested in this project? And one answer is, and this one I'm always sort of hesitant to say in that sort of academic form, is that I'm a very, very, very distant relative of Harriet Hosmer's. Our shared ancestor helped found Concord, and then there's one other shared generation, and after that the line split. But that is how I knew who she was, and my aunt Jody Culkin, who is here as a sculptor, was very interested in Harriet Hosmer. So when I was working at the Brooklyn Museum in the early 90s, right after I got out of college, I was working in the archives, and in my lunch hour, if it was raining, and I would read articles about Harriet Hosmer. And I was really fascinated by her, but I soon had a sort of pressing question. You know, how did she do it? How did she rise to fame so quickly at such a young age in an era that, at least from my understanding of it at the time, in which just about every element of society would work against her? And many of the profiles that I read of the artist, which described her as like ahead of her time, or her success as astonishing and inexplicable, frustrated me. And this is sort of the fate of many 19th century women who accomplished anything. It's sort of chalked up like they were miraculous, or as Nell Irving Painter described depictions of Soldier Truth, an outside force of nature. So when I was in graduate school and sort of looking around for a master's project, I decided I would sort of look into this question of Harriet Hosmer, and that snowballed into a dissertation, which then snowballed very slowly into a biography. But what I ultimately decided is that sort of far from being a miracle or just sort of chalking it up to her incredible charisma, although I do think she was very charismatic, her success came about in large part because she had an extensive network of supporters who really had a vested interest in her success for different reasons and really worked to help her succeed. And these patrons included boosters of American gentility who hoped to prove the United States equal to Europe in terms of art and refinement, and then also women's rights advocates. And if you think about the timing of her career, moving to Rome in 1852, it's just 4 years after the Seneca Falls Convention, when you're just starting to have an organized women's rights movement in the United States. They portrayed the sculptor's skill and accomplishments not as a miracle, but as evidence of what Americans and women were capable of with the proper training and encouragement. And it was this unlikely coalition, along with her own talent, her own desire to succeed, and her careful maintenance of her public image that ultimately forged a place for the artist.